Okay, so welcome to this webinar on lowland development in Indonesia. We are fortunate to have today the President Honorary Bart Schultz also as a part of the presenters, and also President Ragab is there also attending the webinar. And we also welcome other presenters, Professor Budi from Indonesia, Professor Rui from Taiwan, and Dr. Hisham Ghazali, our Vice President from Malaysia. And the closing will be provided by the Mr. Paavan Kumar Reddy, who is the Secretary of the working group. So we welcome all of them. We also welcome all the participants who have taken out their time out of this approaching holiday season and joined the webinar for the presentations. This webinar, we will have certain slides. Next slide. Okay. So in this webinar, the first speaker will be Dr. Budi Santoso from Indonesia. He is a professor of water resources at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering in the University of Gadya, Yogyakarta. And he has done a large number of publications, especially in the reclamation of the soils and then the various other similar difficult conditions for the lowland areas that are already there, especially in Indonesia. He has given lectures on hydraulics, fluid mechanics, mathematical models, and a various large number of other topics. And he has also been involved in the tidal swamp development projects in Indonesia since 1974 till now. So he has a very wealth of experience with him in this area of lowland development. We hardly need to introduce President Honorary Dr. Bart Schultz. His career is spanning more than 40 years of research, advising, and project implementation. He has been at the apex of various developments, especially in the drainage and the development authorities. And he was also the president of ICID, and he also received the first World Irrigation and Drainage Prize. And currently also he mentors the editorial board of Irrigation and Drainage Journal. And he is a person who is considered an authority in the areas of drainage. We have as a panelist Vice President Dr. Hisham Ghazali from Malaysia. He is a chairman of the Malaysian Water Partnership, a non-profit organization. And then he is a former Director General of the National Institute of Water Resources, Malaysia. And prior to that, he was also Director General of the Department of Irrigation and Drainage of Malaysia. So he has been at the apex of the profession in Malaysia and has over 35 years of service experience in the operational, technical, and management and policy positions. And he is also a member of the Malaysian National Committee for Irrigation and Drainage, and also he was a vice president of ICID. So I welcome Dr. Ghazali, and we have Mr. Paavan Kumar Reddy from India, who is a secretary of the working group. He has been our young professional earlier, and he has a graduate in the agricultural engineering and a postgraduate diploma in remote sensing, and he has been working in the areas of water saving and water management in India, especially in the southern part of India, where he has also studied the 10 irrigation projects for the water use efficiency and various other techniques that he has been able to develop for mapping the canals. So he has also got a good experience as far as the operations of the canals are concerned. So we are fortunate to have all these participants today, and now we will start with the webinar proceedings. So at the beginning, I will invite Professor Budi from Indonesia on speaking on the lowland development in Indonesia. And we will all have about 25 minutes each for all the presenters. So, Professor Budi, please.
Thank you very much for the occasion to join the discussion this afternoon. May I share screen of this presentation? Yes, the topic of this discussion this afternoon is about lowland development in Indonesia. So the content of discussion, we like to talk about how the characteristic of lowland and the history of lowland development in Indonesia, and what the components of lowland development and how the water management. And as we know, I think we in the working group of lowland and tidal area, we know that wetland is land and the transitional of between terrestrial and aquatic system, yeah, where the water table is usually at or near the surface. And lowland also has come to mean the tidal coastal and near coastal lowland, yeah, which the tidal influence to the main river is large or there of the time, yeah, in the one here that's or that will also intrusion of saline water, and also we have a peat swarm and poorly drainage of the system. And we come to the definition of the wetland itself. If we see from the ecological units, there is one ecosystem, yeah, single ecosystem that periodically flooded, yeah. Some of them that also that is never dry out, is always flooded, as swamp, marsh, yeah. And then in the area, we have a forest sometimes, and also grassland or lakes. And the ecosystem is depend on the hydrology and the soils type and flora and fauna. And from the geomorphological units, that can distinguish the hydrology, yeah, the coastal lowland and tidal, and floodplain non-tidal and isolated wetland. And this condition, the hydrological condition, will be vary and have a difference of component that influence to the area. In the coastal lowland, influenced by sea tide, yeah, daily high and low water level, because the tide is all they have high tide and low tide, and most vulnerable to sea level rise, alluvia, marine sediment, and also we can find peat on that side. And the other area is floodplain, that non-tidal is influenced by the flood of the river and seasonally deep flooded, yeah. We have fluvial sediment, also a deposit of peat, yeah. And the others is isolated wetland. This is a landscape of non-tidal area and Kalimantan, for example, yeah. It is invaded during wet season, yeah, and can be cultivated during dry season, yeah, for example. And from the ecological zone of lowland Indonesia, we also see that distribution of forest and non-forest in Sumatera, Papua, Kalimantan, yeah, the total of lowland area is about 33 million hectares, yeah. And we can distinguish the type of aquaculture zone. There's deep pit that have a pit of deep of more than 3 meters, shallow pit, floodplain dominated by mineral soil, floodplain dominated by acid sulfate soil, yeah, and mangroves. And in this afternoon, I like to discuss about how to develop the peat soil and the mineral soil, especially in the acid sulfate soil. And then, if we like to see the distribution of lowland area in Indonesia, the yellow, the green color here, and in the east coast of Sumatra and west coast and south coast and Kalimantan, and also in the south coast of Papua. And if we see the tidal fluctuation, we see that in the Papua, the tidal fluctuation can be and reach about 4 meters. Yeah, even 7 meters is very high. But the area in Kalimantan is fluctuated about 2 up to 3 meters, also in east coast of Sumatra. And if we see the potential and the utilization of swamp in Indonesia, total area swamp is about 33 million. Is 33.7 is also with the mangrove, and this is without mangrove area. It can be divided into tidal swamp and non-tidal swamp. It's quite large area in the tidal swamp, but it's developed only about 4 million hectares, and some is developed by government and also the local people, and part of them is cultivated for rice field, farm, plantation, and fish pond. And this is the non-tidal swamp, yeah, also cultivated by government, uncultivated and cultivated by government in this a small part of them. Yeah. And the distribution swamp irrigation that developed by the government can be central government, provincial government, and district government. There are many, yeah. And this is a distribution of the swamp irrigation scheme in Sumatera, Kalimantan, yeah, and also Papua, and part of them in Sulawesi, yeah, for the especially the Sulawesi is for fish pond. And now we like to talk about the history of swamp development and management in Indonesia. So we start from early 19. It's a spontaneous development by local people. Yeah, there is people from Bugis and Banjar. Yeah, that Malay also come to the coastline of the Kalimantan and Sumatra, developed for agriculture. And then the government start for swamp reclamation, for transmigration and food crop production early 1970. And in that moment, the private sector starting to invest for swampland, for especially for palm oil, yeah, and shrimp pond. And then in 1997, there is a big project, mega rice project in central Kalimantan, is known as million hectares development of peat area. And this is the turning point of the development of the swamp area in Indonesia, because there is political reform, yeah, and then also monetary crisis in that moment, yeah. And due to the climate change conference in Bali in 2007, yeah, and the dialogue on swamp development strategic policies, there is another turning point. Yeah, we have to halt the development of swamp because there is a critique of the development of peat area. Yeah, And then there is a commitment to reduce the greenhouse emission by 26% in 2020. Yeah. And the ultimate goal is achieved by reducing emission from deforestation and conversion of peatland. Yeah. And February 2013, the first RED, reducing emission from deforestation and degradation project. And also there is a system that make a moratorium of development from 2011 and 2013 up to 2013. And then now we start again to revitalize the area that is neglected to be food crop production, yeah, food estate. If we see the vulnerability of lowland area in Kalimantan, Sumatera, and Papua, yeah, you see here the high fire vulnerability, yeah, and the part is part of the lowland, yeah, is very high. And I think we have a problem of hazard in the times, yeah, the fire of the peat area that very important for Malaysian and Singaporean people. And 2015 and 2019, there is another new development and rehabilitation of the area, yeah. In the Sumatera island and Kalimantan and Sulawesi and Papua. And if we regarding the planning level, the development, we now have to consider the conservation, not only development but also conservation. Yeah. And we plan in macro system, meso system, and micro system. Yeah. The micro system, we will discuss a lot in the meso and micro system, where the component of the development, for example, the landform, tidal rain, salinity, river regime, sediment type, land use, and production. Yeah. Also, and the microsystem, yeah, especially to determine the land unit. Okay, and then how if we consider the landscape of hydrology? There is area conservation and the area of development. We have to consider that, yeah. The hydrology of the coastal and near coastal peat and lowland ecosystem is very much interconnected. Yeah, the soil are unripe, yeah, organic matter and permeable, and will subside when drained. The impact of drainage is more extensive and critical than a comparable upland situation. On one hand, it's necessary to maintain the natural hydrology for the conservation of peatland and other value ecosystem. Yeah. On the other hand, land reclamation required optimal drainage key for successful development of agriculture, especially for ripening of soil, leaching of the acid sulfate soil, for example. Yeah. A physical separation of development conservation is required to resolve this water management conflict between the conservation and development. Yeah. Resource-based planning involves management in hydrological independent unit. And how about the reclamation of land? Reclamation starts with the drainage, yeah. Start process of physical or chemical soil ripening until such point that new equilibrium is reached. Yeah. We have to be careful with the drainage, yeah, because there is a pyrite containing marine soil will release large amount of sulfuric acid and will suffer from aluminum toxicity or ferrotoxicity, while the composition of organic material may release organic toxin. Without proper land and water management, such conditions may become harmful to flora and fauna, including agriculture and human life. Yeah. And drainage will also cause this land to subside because of the oxidation of organic matter and physical ripening. In the case of peat, the subsidence may ultimately be several meters or more, especially in combination with burning practices. And also to their low-lying position, close to the coastal area, will bear and brown predicted rise in sea level. Yeah, and combination with soil subsidence is highly vulnerable. And how the principle of lowland development and management in Indonesia. The lowland development will create a drainage. Is very careful with overdrain because soil with its consists of peat perhaps or pyrite is being exposed. Yeah, generate greenhouse emission, land subsidence. Yeah, therefore we have to maintain water level elevation for and water circulation. Yeah, water circulation need is for leaching, maintain water level elevation for overdrain. Yeah, and we have to consider to install gate and canal blocking, especially canal blocking for the peat area. And this is the history of the development of some area in Indonesia. The first stage development with an open drainage network, there is no structure. Land productivity is not too high, 1.5 and 2.5 ton per hectare. And then we grow to stages of development. Second, the drainage network is equipped with simple water control structures, improving land water quality in order to realize better agriculture production. For example, how to support the water management for leaching, for example, or prevent the oxidation of the organic matters in the peat area. And the proper manner is higher than 1.5, it's about 2.5 to 3.5 ton per hectare. And then the state development third, fully control water management, prevent over drainage, improve water circulation, leaching acid sulfate soil, river to polder system. Yeah, high land productivity can increase up to 6 ton per hectare. Requirements from infrastructures, institution, or management, availability of water and adequate human resources. Yeah, because we need more production. What is the decisive component in the lowland? Rainfall, tide, river discharge, acid sulfate soils, peat soils, saline water intrusion, and hydrotopography. Yeah, hydrotopography is if we compare the land elevation to the source river elevation, river water is elevation pressure. And therefore, we divide into 4 tidal zones. The first tidal zone is fully tidal, and where the influence of the upstream discharge is low. And then the second tidal zone is reduced tidal, year-round tidal fluctuation, but wet season fluctuation are significantly reduced by the river flow. Yeah, and non-tidal wet season, and the zone 3, yeah, where the tidal fluctuation is only in dry season. Yeah, during most of the wet season, the fluctuations are suppressed, yeah, by the river flow. And the 4th is the upland area, no tidal fluctuation. Yeah, a lowland, non-tidal lowland. Yeah, and what is the hydrotopography? Is comparing the land elevation to tide fluctuation, for example. And we divide into 4 types of land elevation, hydrotopographic elevation. The type A is about the area between mean low tide and mean high needs. Yeah. Daily irrigation by tidal flooding during high tide and daily drainage during low tide. And type B, yeah, is higher. Line elevation is higher. Line elevation between mean high need tide and mean high spring. And type C, line elevation above the high spring tide. No tidal flooding. Permanent drainage. Tidal movement is only affect the groundwater. And type D is higher again. Line elevation beyond the influence of the daily tides. Limited drainage. Yeah. And how to determine the type of type hydrotopography, for example. This is, for example, Belanti Tusek. We from the survey of topography, we know the land elevation and compared to the observation of tidal. Yeah. We can generate the component of tide, and then we know the mean tide level, highest astronomical tide, and lowest astronomical tide, and then we can compare the line elevation to the tide, and we can define the hydrotopography A and hydrotopography B, for example, in this area. And also, this is the area and that hope, yeah, is zone tidal 3, yeah, where the fluctuation of tide is only during dry season, and during wet season is influenced by the upstream river discharge. And then we try to understand the topographical level, and then compare to the water level during here. This is during the dry season, and the other side is during wet season, and then we can know how to develop this area. It can be treated as polder area during high wet season, and treated as tidal irrigation area during the dry season. This complicated condition, yeah, need good water management. And I think smart water management with real-time data measurement is necessary to support the operation of water infrastructure during two different conditions, wet and dry season. Yeah. And what is, we go to another component is the type of soil. This is the pilot oxidation, where the ferrosulfate, yeah, and then by oxidation with water, they will produce iron, yeah, ferro, and sulfuric acid, yeah. And then this will affect to the amount of nutrient and chemical that are soluble in soil water. Yeah. And therefore, the amount of nutrient available to plant is very is dependent on the pH and also the toxicity, the aluminum toxicity, manganese toxicity, ferro toxicity, calcium deficiency, magnesium deficiency, yeah, because of the acidic soil. So we have to consider this, yeah, the pH and the toxicity. For the toxicity, we measure the toxicity by electric conductivity, because there is a component of ferro or aluminum sulfate, for example. And the correct balance is where the soil pH is about between 4.4 to 7.5. Yeah. So we have to manage, yeah, the system. We can use the calcium to increase the pH, or by the water management. Yeah. How the influence of the acid sulfate water. We can see here the root is not developed, it's only is above the water groundwater level where the acid sulfate exists. The root cannot penetrate deeper and also rot sometimes. And we see the accumulation of ferrous iron oxidation produced in canal. The color is red here, and the rice field is become yellow. And this is the deposit of the acid sulfate solution in the canal, the red color. And this is the in the tertiary canal, for example. And from the observation in the Dadao, for example, with our telemetric measurement here, there we can find the correlation between pH and electric conductivity. Electric conductivity show the mangan or aluminum or ferro toxicity in the water. In the first development, for example, in Barambe, we can find a pH about 2. With the EC is about 2,000 up to 4,000 microsiemens per centimeters. And the good situation if we have a pH about 4 and the EC less than 100. This is the classification of EC for agriculture purposes. So we saw here that low sanitary hazard in EC 100 to 150. Water can be used for most crop on most soil. And then this is C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, and C6. And in the first development of the area, we found in the C4 and C3 that we need to leach out the acidity. So if we see the previous explanation, the reclamation of acid sulfate soil in Kalimantan is already explained by some researcher. Reclamation by chemical liming is avoided because it's very high cost. So appropriate water management is the only practical way to manage the reclamation of this acid sulfate soil. There are some options water management, such as water management to keep potential acid sulfate soil submerged, so it can prevent acid formation and no oxidation, and surface water management and leaching. And there is also some recommended amount of water to leach out. And estimated that the annual leaching amount is only 1.3% of the acidity, up to 65 centimeters deep depth. At this rate, it may need about 80 years to get rid of all acidity. So we have to promote other way to leach out the water management. I like to show you the Barambe scheme. It's developed in 1970. This is typical canal of network acid sulfate soil FOG system, where we construct a reservoir at the end of the secondary canal. This is two-way flow system, means that during high tide, the flow comes from river to the canal and distributed to the tertiary canal, and then during low tide, the water drains out to the river. And the reservoir dimension is about 400 square meter. That act as flow regulator, because they can flush out the acid solution during low tide. This is the based on data in 1983. It means about 10 years after development. And the simulation show that by the reservoir, there is a shift of the tide that give the energy for flushing. Yeah. Station 1 is in the river, station 4 is in the middle, and the end of this reservoir, we see that the different energy can give flush out. Also in the other secondary, station 1 and station 6. Yeah, and then we saw here that the pH fresh water that's come from river. Normally the pH is about 6, yeah, can reach the station 5, yeah, up to here, but cannot reach up to station 6, yeah. And also in this left side, it means that we need more time to flush out, yeah, because the production of the acid solution in the tertiary canal is very high in that moment. So the canal network proposes is provision irrigation water, soil quality improvement by reclamation or amelioration, leaching the toxic material, dilution of canal water resulting from leaching toxic material, control water table to prevent excess excessive period oxidation and peat drying and flood protection. This is simple hydraulic structure in this second stage of development, yeah, in the tertiary canal, yeah, and how to improve water management. Yeah, this is defined by Josh Rotterman in 2009. Yeah, this is control drainage, water retention, flood and salinity control, flushing, one-way canal flow, and I think we have to introduce smart water management for the system. Yeah, what is maximum drainage? Yeah, gate is open during low tide, closed during high tide. And control drainage, maximum water supply is during low tide is closed, is open during high tide. Yeah, water retention means we have to close all, keep rice field inundated. Yeah, flood and salinity control, open or close low tide. Yeah, to drain during low tide, perhaps. Yeah, and close if there is a saline water intrusion, for example, and close to the high tide, yeah. And flushing, and one-way canal flow, yeah. Structure at supply end, structure at drainage end, yeah. And we allow to water flow to the secondary canal or tertiary canal during high tide with fresh water and drain out from the other side during low tide. Yeah. This is, for example, proposed one-way flow system in Belanti, for example. So this is the main canal supply of fresh water from Kahayan River, and then we have a weir here to allow the high tide, freshwater high tide, to the secondary canal, and then flat gate at the end to the collector canal to drain the acid water to the collector canal. And how about the peat soil? Yeah, I think you all know the peat soil formation, where the accumulation of organic matters, yeah, in the depressing area, and then develop until because there is no decomposition of the organic matter, yeah, to be dome, yeah, peat dome here, yeah, and this is the deposition of the organic matter that perhaps can have about 90% of water, contain of 90% of volume of water in the soil. So this is the reservoir of water, yeah, and for the characteristic I take from Andres, yeah, natural and management of tropical peat soil. We can see the main characteristics of peat soil. Physical properties can be moisture relationship, yeah. So some place they have 60% of water volume, yeah. Porosity, high porosity, irreversible drying, means that if we drain out, they can go back to the moisture content. Yeah, swelling and shrinking, topographic situation normally is a dome, is the of peat. Elevation of surface is higher than, and from hydrological point of view, peat dome can be a source of water. Yeah. And then will be very very vulnerable for the drainage canal. This is the situation where in 2004 2014 we have a very huge of development of palm oil plantation, yeah. Oil palm plantation, what is the deforestation and try to burn out the trees, and they create the drainage swamp, yeah. And the drainage swamp is development of drainage canal, lowering groundwater level, draining peat, reversible, and so subsidence, yeah. To this condition, the government tries to stop the development of the lowland in that times. Yeah. So the development of peatland, we have to be careful. Yeah. Land and water management must be implemented with consideration given to specific characteristics of the agroecological zone, to meet the needs of communities for maintaining stable water and farming system. Yeah, especially if you like to develop plantation for palm oil, for example, we have to be very careful because they need to dry out the area to be used for. So we have to consider the good agricultural practices for agroforestry, for example. Drainage depth is closely related to CO2 emission, yeah. So be careful, that's it, because also for subsidence and the risk of fire, yeah. So we need a stable water level, yeah. Can be maintained through iterative cycle of rewetting and fine-tuning of drainage system through construction of physical infrastructure. So very appropriate managed peatland water table, especially during drought, combined with use of fire to clear land, have resulted in the more frequent occurrence of fire devastation surrounding area. This is be careful about that. And we have an agency of restoration of peat land, and we define 3R. Yeah, rewetting, revegetation, revitalization. Yeah. So rewet, revegetate, and revitalize are part of the rapid response to ensure water level are maintained, the risk of peatland fire, and potential for subsidence to achieve stabilization. This is the peatland restoration agency concept for the peatland conservation. So they define the cultivation function in the development area and conservation function in the restoration area. Conservation. So this artificial drainage canal may be already developed. We have to back canal backfilling, yeah, because the overdrain will be dangerous for land subsidence and drying of peat. And also for the development area, we have to make a canal blocking for water level control system. Yeah. by structure, yeah, and filling material. This is the canal blocking, for example, and that we developed, and this is the canal backfilling. Several schemes in central Kalimantan, for example, this is the area we developed from 1970, for example, and close to the Kayan River, the source of Kayan River. And this area is the million hectares area that developed in 1996. Yeah. And the others new developed in 1980, for example, is Katingan. Yeah, it's about 10,000 hectares. Yeah, here is the area close to the coastal area. We have see the salt intrusion during dry season, and also there is area of peat dome, yeah, behind that can be used as the source of fresh water. This is the rice field in Katingan scheme. Yeah.
Dr. Budi, please
Yeah, a minute. Yeah. Since I saw only some experience we have in Katingan, for example. Yeah. This is tillage, Katingan scheme, and harvesting and Katingan scheme, and also flat kits. We produce manufacture in the site on site. And also I like to introduce smart water management. Yeah, what is to manage to understand the reclamation, leaching process, yeah. And I introduced in the data house scheme, for example, we install 3 points, the L1 key and S1, where the L1 is the source of fresh water, and the Q is the monitoring the water level in this supply canal, and also water quality. And then this is the online telematic station. You can open this website to see online measurement of the rainfall recorder, water level recorder, pH, and electrical conductivity, salinity, and the others. Yeah. And this, the interaction of rainfall and water level and pH in this station. And we see here during when there is a rainfall, the blue one, high rainfall, the pH will be higher, yeah, and the water level will increase, yeah. So when there is no rainfall, the pH will decrease and water level is lower. So the conclusion that I can bring this afternoon is tidal development is started in the late 70s, but up to 40 years of reclamation, part of the area with potential acid sulfide soil still have unfavorable water and soil quality to do unfinished reclamation. And also in the peat area, we have to be careful on that. Yeah. Appropriate water management has been exercised in many countries to overcome the problem of land subsidence, acidity, toxicity caused by oxidized and acid sulfide soil. Given hydro-topographical condition, depth of peat, depth of potential acid sulfide soil deposit, and intrusion of saline water are the main threat that need a proper solution. Keeping potential acid sulfide soil in surplus condition, maintaining surface and groundwater table, and providing fresh water for leaching, including toxicity and acidity, are the keyword for water management in lowland development. Yeah. The climate, soil, and topography that define the zone determine the crop suitability, and potential productivity of various communities. The realized productivity also affected by peasant production infrastructure, access to agriculture input, production practices, which can vary regionally. And at the end, smart water management should be started to overcome the complexity of water management. Thank you very much.
We are thankful to Dr. Budi.
Yes.
for a very nice presentation and detailed presentation. We will request all the presenters, all the participants to post their questions in chat box, question answer session. The questions will be taken after the second presentation, at the end of the presentations. So again, request all the participants to post their questions in the question answer. Now,
is it okay now?
Yeah, perfect, sir. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you for inviting me to give this presentation on the water management and flood protection for development and management of lowlands. I like to start with some characteristics of lowlands. Lowland areas are all over the world. It are coastal areas, river floodplains, and inland depressions. These are often sensitive areas with a high ecological value, and basically they are unsuitable for development. Nevertheless, there is a high pressure to develop these areas for various types of land use, especially agriculture, urban industry, and recreation. The world's population is increasingly living and working in lowland areas, and in fact, there are no indications that this will change. The developments that we can see in the lowlands is improvement in agriculture, increase in the value of crops, buildings, water management facilities, and infrastructure. The value of urban property, buildings, and infrastructure have significantly increased and will further increase in future. Especially in South and East Asia, we see a very rapid growth of urban areas in the lowlands and in the neighborhood of the existing cities. I give you a few examples on this slide. Some nature conservation, the tidal rice areas in Korea, agricultural land, highly developed agricultural land, and the urbanization in the lowlands. However, we have a lot of problems in the lowland areas, and in fact, Professor Budi illustrated several of them. Inadequate water management and flood protection, and insufficient pollution control. There are technical problems due to the soil conditions, the peat, the acid sulfate clay, saline soils, and subsidence. Operation, maintenance, and management problems. In many countries, the systems are designed and built, but then there is a major problem with the operation and maintenance. And in the lowlands, you need permanent operation and maintenance. So we see increased damage and casualties due to flooding, especially in relation to the rapid urbanization. And there are the longer term problems, the subsidence and the sea level rise. I show you some examples of pollution problems that we see in many areas. The top two are pollutions in urban canals, and generally this pollution collects in front of culverts and in front of outlets. On the left side, on the bottom, it is oil pollution in a reclaimed area. And on the right bottom side, you will see a disposal site for polluted sludge in my country, the Netherlands. We have now 3 of these disposal sites where we dredge the polluted soils from the lakes and the canals, and we dump it in such disposal sites. And it's a very costly activity. This is all linked to the population growth. And what you see here is I updated for this presentation the slides that I have presented earlier, but this is very recent. I distinguish, there is a distinction in the developed countries, the emerging countries, and the least developed countries, as you can see on the slide. The developed and the emerging countries, the population growth is still there, but very limited. And most of the population growth is in the least developed countries. So population growth and urbanization, by far the majority of about 70% of the world population lives in the emerging countries. And especially there, the rapid urbanization is going on. You have to think of China, India, also Indonesia, by the way, and Brazil. The growth in the emerging and least developed countries. In the developed countries, there is not so much growth anymore. We see also a migration from the rural to the urban areas. So all the growth is concentrated in the urban areas. And in the emerging countries, especially, the standard of living is rapidly rises. And that are all the changes that have to be dealt with, and a lot of them occur in the lowland areas. I illustrate for you the growth in the urban population. You see in the lower bars the development, again in that distinction in developed, emerging and least developed countries, and the red bars are for the world as a whole. And this slide is from 1950 to 2050, so 100 years. And it is expected that on a global scale, the urban population will increase from less than 1 billion to more than 6 billion people. So with all the implications, and a lot of these developments are in the lowland areas. The rural population, you see that more or less a peak has been reached. So between 2022 and 2040, the peak will be reached at a global scale. And then the rural population is expected to reduce. And what you also see is when you see the orange bars, that most of this increase still in the rural population is only in the least developed countries and not so much anymore into the emerging and the developing countries, where in fact the rural population is already at this peak. The reason for this is that there is upscaling going on at the global scale in the farm sizes. So the more wealthy the farmers become, generally the larger their farm becomes. And that is one of the reasons that there is a reduction in the rural population. What you also see clearly on this slide is that the cities, this slide shows you the cities in the world with more than 5 million residents. And what you see is in 1950, there are about 8 of these red bars. And in 2015, if you would count all these bars together, it is more than 40. But what you also see is that all these bars, except a few, are in the coastal areas, which generally implies they are also to a large extent in the lowland areas. While we had the presentation on Indonesia, I like to show you the growth of Jakarta, the capital, as an example. And the pictures that you see here are from 1972 to 2005, so it's 33 years. Now, and you see that the red is housing, of course, and the green is other area, agriculture and forest. How rapidly Jakarta has been growing over these past years, but you can show slides like this for all the major cities in the emerging countries. If we look at the world as a whole, there is a distinction in this slide between the land cities and the coastal cities. The coast cities with more than 1 million are blue, and with more than 5 million inhabitants are black. And the white is 1 million in the land cities, and the red are more than 5 million in the land cities. But also, when you see the land cities, several of them are along the rivers. And then in many cases, the new urban quarters are building in the lower parts, and the old urban quarters are generally located in the higher parts. So the lowlands play a major role also in these urban developments of the land cities. What is important with respect to the development when we have to deal with urban management in the urban water management and flood protection? In urban areas, it would be preferred that the urban areas are higher, the surface level, than the surrounding rural areas. That when a flood occurs, most of it will go to the rural areas and not so much in the urban areas. Within the rural areas, farm buildings to be built higher than in the cropped area, the surrounding cropped area. And within the urban areas, the houses the highest, and then the streets, and finally the parks and the green areas. When you look around in your own city, you will see that in many cases this will not be the case, which then implies that when there is a severe rainfall, that the houses are inundated first and not the parks, where it is not so harmful. Also a slide on land subsidence, because also Professor Budi explained that that plays a major role in the lowland areas. So after reclamation, often land subsidence occurs, especially it is a problem in the humid tropical peat soils and in the urban areas. I think Professor Budi has clearly explained that, 10 to 15 centimeter per year, and that is an important consequence. In time, drainage by gravity has to be replaced by drainage by pumping, while the area cannot be drained by gravity anymore. The pole that you see here as an example of land subsidence is taken in the United Kingdom, and it is in the Fens. That is a famous area on the east coast of England, where the subsidence was more than 4 meters in about 300 years. I give you some subsidence data. Jakarta, Semarang and Surabaya in Indonesia, 6 to 20 centimeters per year. Jakarta, half a centimeter to 70 centimeters per year. But also cities like Bangkok, Ho Chi Minh City, San Francisco Bay, 4 to 5 centimeters per year. Ganges and Brahmaputra Delta, 2 to 4 centimeters per year. And all these figures are significantly above the sea level rise. If we compare land subsidence with the values that you see in the coastal areas or can see in the coastal areas, here I have compared the subsidence of 5 centimeters per year, 10 centimeters and 15 centimeters per year with the worst forecast of sea level rise in the world, which is about 1 meter in a century. And then you see that the subsidence is much more significant than the sea level rise. We all debate sea level rise, and only in groups like ours now, we debate subsidence. And the subsidence, in fact, is much more important than the sea level rise. Which implies that on the left on top, you still see the possibility of drainage by gravity to the outlet during low tide or during low river flows. But on the left side on top and on the downside, there are all the pumping stations that are more and more needed nowadays to drain the excess water. On the right on top, a local pumping station. On the left side on the bottom, a big pumping station, and on the right side. And all these pumping stations are required when drainage by gravity is not possible anymore. I like to say a few words as well on flood protection. The map on the left side are the flood protection figures in the Netherlands. We have very high flood protection figures because we had a lot of flooding in the past and we had learned our lessons. And what you see on the map is a risk of flooding or between 1 in 1250 years and 1 in 10,000 years, dependent if you are along the river or along the coast. The red area has a protection of 1 in 10, a risk of flooding of only 1 in 10,000 years. The graph on the right side, and that I find that a very interesting one. It is the only type of graph I've ever seen. This is for the Mekong Delta, and they have learned to deal with the flooding because they also have the category of a nice flood. So when there is a normal flooding from Mekong River in the Mekong Delta, they are in fact happy. They get the sediment for the crops and they can irrigate or drain the crops as they want to have it. However, when the Mekong River has a high discharge or a low discharge, they can even have a damaging flood, or they can have no flood. And in both cases, they have a problem. There is a major change now going on in the Mekong River basin by the construction of many dams in the upstream, and that will completely change the hydrology of the Mekong Delta. So also Vietnam has to deal with that problem. Development approaches related to flood protection. Basically, you can distinguish 3 approaches. Put the relevant infrastructure and valuable buildings and structures relatively high and accept flooding of the less valuable parts. The second is the protection with submersible dikes that protect lands against the regular floods, but are overtopped during the more extreme floods. In fact, that is the situation in the Mekong Delta, where they like to have the more extreme floods, because at that time of the year, there is also a lot of sediment in the river, and they use the sediment as a fertilizer. And then the highest level of protection a high level of protection with dike that only fail in extreme events. I showed you the figures of the Netherlands, 1 in 10,000 years for the coastal area, but the safety standards in many other countries are much lower, and there is a major risk for big calamities. The most extreme case that I have observed in my life is the city of Dhaka in Bangladesh. It is a city of almost 10 million people, and the risk, there are good dikes. By the way, the dikes are relatively high, but the risk of failure is 1 time in 50 years. So that is once in a lifetime, you can say. United States and United Kingdom, including New Orleans after the Katrina flooding and all the reconstruction, is only 1 time in 100 years. In India, there is a distinction between urban and industry and the rural area, and that is in fact reflect that you like to have the cities more safe than the rural area. 1 in 100 for urban and industry, and 1 in 25 years for the rural area. And you see a similar in China, the major cities, a protection with a risk of failure 1 in 200 years, the cities in 1 in 100 years, and the rural area 1 in 20 years. Finally, the figure of Canada, British Columbia, that is on the west side of Canada, 1 in 200 years. These are just some examples of those chances with the risk of failure. And that is, of course, very crucial in the development of the lowland area. What safety standard will it be designed for? I show you some examples of flood protection. The dikes, on the left is the inland dike. On the right side on top is the dike surrounding the city of Dhaka in Bangladesh. On the left side on the bottom, that is a wolf. I found that a very interesting statue. That wolf is along the Yangtze River, and it is upstream of the city of Wuhan. And in the past, the dike has breached there quite a lot, several times. It has been improved, but the wolf also has to take care that the city of Wuhan will not be flooded. That's of course symbolic. On the right side, and that is a complete different aspect of flood protection, that is a coastal dike in South Korea, but there is a fence in front of that dike because there is a risk that the northern neighbors like to enter that area, which the southern neighbors don't like. I give you data, and these are from databases in that collect data on the risk of flooding in the different countries of the world. And the data that I show here are updated. They are maintained at the moment by the university in Leuven in Belgium. And they have a database where you can find all these data. The dead people on average, so let me say about 20,000 people per year die because of a flooding in the world. This is world data. If you see how many people are affected, that is significantly more. And that is about 70 on average. When you see the average of the black trend line, it is about 75 million people every year are affected by flooding, which is quite significant. But fortunately, these lines go slowly down. So maybe more measures have been taken to protect the people. On the other hand, the damage, and that reflects the urbanization in the lowland area. The annual damage because of flooding goes from, let me say, $30 billion per year. And at the moment, it is more than $40 billion per year on average, the risk of the damage due to flooding. Important issues. Flooding can have external or internal causes. External river flood, storm surges at sea, canal or lake level. Internal, high local rainfall, damage to property, risk for loss of human life. And it is important to have a forecasting time because that will save a lot of, especially risk of life and measures to be taken. Decision on the safety standard. Of course, we have to make the economic computations to determine it. But finally, in my opinion, it will be a political decision. I show you as an example of flood forecasting, the system that the Mekong River Commission has developed for the Mekong River. The green arrows or dots have a meaning that the water is either the water level is either going down or is going up. Green, no warning. Yellow, warning, and red, really a problem. So it is a very good flood forecasting system that the Mekong River Commission has developed for the riparian states of the Mekong River. This is a kind of a favorite figure of me, that when things are designed, so the more you invest in flood protection, the less damage you may expect. And if we take the cost and the damage, for example, as this is a theoretical example, together, and we take the total line, then the lowest part, the total line is the yellow line for 2020. And then you could design for the situation is 2020, say between 1 in 10, between in 100 years. Then you have the lowest level of total cost and damage. However, when there is development in the area, and that occurs in many of these coastal areas and lowland areas, I have not the cost increased. So I have kept the cost the same as in 2020, but I have increased the damage that you would get when an area is rapidly urbanized. And then you get the blue line, which is the total line of 2070, so 50 years later. And then the optimum, the lowest point of the blue line is not between 1 in 10 and 1 in 100 year, but it is between in 1 in 100,000 year. So it means that when you are involved in flood protection work, you cannot just take the present day situation, but you have to take into account what is expected in the development of the area. And then that is why I think you have to take a political decision finally. You have to decide whether you really want to design only for the present day situation or only for the situation, let me say 50 years later. But in practice, I think at the political level, some decision will be taken somewhere in between. But it is good, very good to make the inventory, not for the present day situation, but also for the future. Role of the government. In lowland development projects, government plays an important role as she initiates development that fit in her development policy and prevents unwanted developments. For the technical aspects, the government can be in charge for the development plans, legal framework, standards on the functioning of the system, and actual implementation. Different government levels, we always speak of one government, but the government has different levels and they may play different roles. In fact, they have to play different roles. O&M is permanently required. You cannot sit down after the construction. O&M is permanently required, and government and private sector would have to work in cooperation. When government and private sector are able to do that, you will see that things will work. If they are not able to do it, you will see that things will not work. I like to conclude more or less with the impact of climate change, where everybody is speaking about, and the impact of our own human activities. If you see the impact of climate change, there is the rise of the mean sea level, the change in river regimes and increase in peak discharges of the rivers. There is the increase in annual rainfall and in the peak rainfall. And if you really take all the forecasts and you see the impacts, then the impact is 10 to 20 to 30% change per century. That is the impact of climate change in the forecast that we have nowadays. If you see the impact of human activities, so the increase in value of public and private property, the increase in population, the increase in value of crops, then you don't speak of 10 to 30%, but you speak of 100 to 1000% per century. And that is why I like to make a plea again. We should pay much more attention to the impact of human activities in the future than just to climate change. Climate change is important. I am not a denier of climate change. It is there, but please be aware that what we do ourselves in the lowland areas has much more impact than what the climate change is doing. So a few concluding remarks. Lowland areas have a tremendous potential for development. A careful selection of areas to be developed, as well as of the development approach, is of major importance. In such an approach, the specific physical conditions have to play an important role in order to prevent reduced benefits from generally considerable investments. Man-induced change in land use, urbanization and subsidence are much faster and have much more impact than the impacts of climate change. We are concerned, and that is a statement of Mr. Salomon Kronenberg, who was a well-known, or who is a well-known geologist. And he said, we are concerned about the calamities that hit us, but many of these calamities are only such disasters while we started to live on volcanoes, at active faults, along subsiding coasts and flooding rivers. With that, I'd like to conclude my presentation and to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Bart, for your excellent presentation. It was very interesting and it will be useful for all the present members. Now I request our Vice President, Noor Hashim Ghazali, for his address.
Thank you very much, Central Office. Assalamualaikum and good evening. Good evening to everyone. It's almost 7:30 in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. I'm very happy to see a very active, there are many participants from all over. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Professor Budi and President Honoré Bart Schultz on their presentations. I think they are very, very interesting ones, and I'm quite impressed with the information that's been presented. I'd like to touch on a few things, and first with Professor Budi's presentation. In Indonesia, as he has presented, the lowland situation is almost the same as in Malaysia. We have seen a gradual expansion of of agriculture in the coastal lands, and in our country it begins in the early way back in the before the 20th century, and it has expanded so much so that most of our coastal cities now have emerged from such expansion from agriculture. It has slowly become urbanized, and 60% of our population now resides in the coastal cities. The one thing that we notice is that our reliance on groundwater is very minimal on the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia, which is just across the Straits of Malacca from Sumatra. And as such, there were not many issues of land subsidence in our coastal areas, as opposed to perhaps if you take Jakarta, for instance. And our cities are very dependent on river for the source of water. Hence, the issue of subsidence is very insignificant to us. But still, development of lowlands result in changes from agriculture to other types of development. And we have seen along the coast of Peninsular Malaysia, which is opposite the Straits of Malacca, across from Indonesia, we have seen the cities there have, some of the cities have proceeded to reclaim land from the sea, not for agriculture as in the past, but for other industries such as electronics and also for commercial development. You can see such reclamations happening along the coast of the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia, in the city of Malacca and also Penang. And we've seen that from the livelihood of the people, and it were essentially fishermen and farmers. It has become more urbanized when industrialization has come in, and we have done a lot of manufacturing on those reclaimed lands. Floods are, of course, a perennial issue in Malaysia, and I'm very happy to see that some of the remarks that Professor Bart Schultz has presented is, I'm in line with some of his comments, especially on the fact that the human impact on these on the disastrous floods and what we are experiencing now. The human activities contribute essentially more than climate change, and I'm quite impressed that he has managed to produce some very interesting graphs that show you the cost of damages against when he presents the curve that shows cost of damage against what is the damage like if you do not do any protection now and wait until the future, and you may be required to spend more. And we see that the floods in our country, in Malaysia, is becoming more serious. And in fact, right now we are in the monsoon period with the northeast monsoon, and the northeast monsoon in the Straits of, for the South China Sea. And at the moment, we are getting record rainfalls in some of the areas of the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, which is facing the South China Sea. And one area we have received 1/3 of the rainfall of the whole year in almost 24 hours. So we are seeing serious floods now. As we are speaking, there are serious floods occurring on the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia. That's about all for my opening comments on the two papers, and I hope the other participants can come in with your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Noor, for your remarks. Now we will take question answer session, and then our chair will interact with the participants.
We request Paavan to read out the questions.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
request Paavan to read out the questions so that visitors will address it. Paavan, please.
Yeah. I think this is question by Professor Kau. This is to Professor Budi. So do you have any ideas on smart water management? I think he has already answered it. So
Yes. Sorry.
so do you have any ideas on smart water management?
Oh yeah. So what the idea of the smart water management is that because there is a complicated component that join in the area, so we need record of the data for one year, for example, that we have to understand the influence of the upstream discharge, river discharge, and the influence of the tide, yeah, and also the development of the reclamations, yeah. So I think if we have, for example, I saw you the condition where the area in Dadao, for example, where the hydrotopography is different in the wet season and in the dry seasons. So the operation and manual is very different in the dry season and wet season. So we have to give a guide very properly, yeah. And with using the smart water management, it can be managed efficiently, I think. Yeah, I try to introduce that in Data Hope and also in Kalimantan.
Yeah, so I think in our presentation you are mentioning telemetry based suggestions also, so where it can collect water quality parameters, soil parameters, and weather parameters. So it can include in that one. So I think next question is from Mr. Kemra Sharma. This is to Professor Bart. So how far flood protection is concerned, rural areas are given far less importance as compared to urban areas.
There is a distinction, and of course, it doesn't mean that the rural people have to be less protected than the urban people, but the difference is especially in the damage. So when you and of course this distinction is applied in many countries, while the risk is indeed lower. So the flooding goes first to that area. But it means that with the layout of that area, you have to take care that the damage to the people themselves and the risk for death and the risk to be affected is of course relatively low in that area. And that really the risk of the flooding is not in the farmhouses themselves, let me say, and in the villages. So it takes, and in fact, in the Mekong Delta, you see very good examples for that. So they make a distinction between the villages and the farmhouses and the area where the crops are. And in that way, you can prevent to a large extent the flooding of the cities where the damage is immediately much higher than in the rural area. And that is the reason that these countries do it. And to be honest, I think that is a good approach. But you have to lay out the area to accommodate for that. And that is the crucial issue, while this is often not done.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Khan. So I think one more question for you. How sustainable operation and maintenance can be made without government funding annually?
Yeah, that is a very, very crucial question. I have been a teacher for many years of international students, and I always told them, look, everybody is thinking when the construction is ready, that is a success of the project. But that is not the success of the project. The success of the project is that when after 5 years or 6 years or 10 years, whatever you take, that the project is still operated and maintained very well. And then it is a success. And I was involved in the judgments of quite a lot of feasibility studies. And I always said, look, those feasibility studies are interesting, but when the local community, the government and the private sector is committed to the project, you will get a result that is beyond the result of the feasibility study. And when they are not committed, you will be below the feasibility study. But it is in many countries, especially in the emerging and the least developed countries, it is very complicated to get operation and maintenance done in the proper way, while it influences the whole society. It is not just the cost and the techniques, it is especially how will the society operate these things. And in many countries, there is a large tradition, but a lot of the new schemes, there is not really a tradition how the things have to be operated and maintained. And then it will fail. And you get the, by the way, I also saw on the screen again some slides about rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is basically wrong because you bring the system back in the original state. And what you have to do when a system is in decay, you have to upgrade it or to modernize it to get it in a position or a condition that it is suited for the present day and the future situation. And that may be quite different from the situation when the original structure was constructed. So that is what I mean of the importance of operation and maintenance. And it is very crucial. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bart.
Thank you, Paavan. Thank you for your question answers. We'll take a break in the questions because of the time constraint. Now I request our work group chair, Dr. Kao, for his remarks.
Yeah. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I will be echo of the Professor Bashu. We are thanks, Bashu, you gave us showing to us very clearly data between the land subsidence and the climate change sea level rise. It's very clearly because the land subsidence is very serious then the sea level rising. So it's a reason why in these 2 years I'm so very curious about the coastline land subsidence, because I say the story because when I was young, I never know what means land subsidence. I never know the people over pumping groundwater what make the land subsidence. I never know. But when I be a professor, okay, the government assigned me this mission. Okay, I clearly understanding and know it, and now it's very, very important and very, very serious. So from my information, many countries, they are never have the survey, especially the whole the nation or state or the ground surveillance. So they never discover the land already subsidence. So just like a Budi's presentation, they have just knowing the land subsidence from the bridge or be subsidence. So I say for the natural hazards, not only for flood but also the sea dike, we have to be protection is. So I very agree the Professor Pashils, you have the prevention using the hardware, for example, sea dike or the more long more outstanding of the criteria to design this. And also, in my experience, I have to say, the strategy and the policy and the strategy of the government is very important, because now we have, of course, groundwater is a kind of the water resources, but we have to be limited to use it. So, for example, in Taiwan, we have the limited people to pumping the groundwater. Of course, we have to be to promote this surface water reclamation. And now we are using the water industrial strategy. For example, the wastewater reusing, and we set up these savings smart water management using the smart for saving water uses. And the other important way, we make this the groundwater well for how to say, for the emergency. For example, we have brother nearby Taiwan, they have the defense. When one day they have something for attack Taiwan, we have to protect the water resources. So we make the groundwater well to how to say, to limit this, and in the future, maybe in the emergency, we can be used just only in emergency situation can be used. So as you know, this year, next year will be next year will be the working group mandate will be completed. So we have to revise this and to extending. And I just talking to the Dr. Isham. We can be, maybe we can planning how about the next phase. I think next phase of the working group mandate is very important, especially that more wide education, more wide dissemination about the knowledge. For that all the people knowing land subsidence. You never fear it in the normal days, but when the flood coming, you will be fine. It's very serious and very important. Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you. Here's my comments.
We really appreciate the hard work by SDTA work group, particularly chair, vice chair, and secretary, and the panelists, and our today's presenters for their excellent presentation. And we conclude with thanks to all. And we again request all the questions will be answered if you send an email to ICID email, icid@icid.org. Because of the time constraint, we conclude here only. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much on behalf of
Thank you.
Working Group on Sustainable Development of Tidal Areas. So I thank Chairman and Honorable President Bart and today's speaker, Professor Budi.